Welcome to Vacation Station, hosted by Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazines.com.
From the Pro Football Hall of Fame to the McKinley Presidential Library and Museum and the Hall of Fame City Food Tour, like, hey, go on a food tour with wineries, travel and lifestyle writer Deborah Stone is back on Big Blend Radio's Vacation Station show today. She's going to tell us all about her adventures in Canton, Ohio. And as she says in her article, she says, this football city, well, it exceeds expectations. And reading it, she taught me more about football than I ever knew. Like, it's amazing. And it actually, for someone who really doesn't know much about football, I'm interested in going to the Hall of Fame because I want to hear about the history of how the sport actually evolved and came to be. Her article will be featured in the November-January issue of Big Blend Radio and TV magazine, but you can see the article right now. Just go to blendradioandtv.com. Debbie's one of our regular Big Blend Radio expert contributors, and if you just go to blendradioandtv.com, you'll see her expert page there and all her links to her articles on that site and in the magazine. And we like to call her Fire Monkey because she is. So how are you, Fire Monkey Debbie? Or Debbie Fire Monkey?
I'm a sizzling, ladies. I'm a sizzling.
Oh, that's because she went on a food tour in Canton. Like, hey, so, and I was just thinking about this. This is cool that you went in there, and we've got a cool photo that someone took of you in the Hall of Fame, the Football Hall of Fame. But this is interesting, because you've been covering the Midwest. You did Detroit, Cleveland, and you went from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to the Football Hall of Fame. So Ohio seems to be really kicking some Hall of Fame butt in regards to, football, music, you name it.
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of at a state that I just, didn't really consider a whole lot when I was thinking about traveling but then when I was doing this emphasis on the Midwest and the Heartland, and I went from the Motown, the Motown Museum in Detroit, and then the Rock and Roll, Hall, and then, here's the Football Hall of Fame, and it's just, there's a lot in these places. But Ohio, there's more than meets the eye, and especially in a place like Canton, where I think everybody, definitely ties the Football Hall of Fame to Canton, but as I say in my story, there's this incredibly cool food scene. There is also a whole music scene. There is some history there, and public art on display. And so it really is worth a trip, especially if you do it kind of as a sideline to, or as an extra leg in your journey if you're going to Cleveland, because it's only probably about just an hour away from Cleveland. So it makes for a nice extra stopover, and for people who especially are fans of football, it is definitely a pilgrimage. It's a bucket list attraction for them.
It's interesting too. Now, I'm going to give everyone the website to go to visitcanton.com for Canton, Ohio. And if you're into football, check out profootballhof.com. But it's interesting because of the presidential history.
Yes.
When you're at Cleveland, I'm just kind of looking at this because they're all connected. We had President James Garfield has, a historic site in Mentor, Ohio. He's also got his memorial there. And then here we've got President McKinley. He's got his memorial, but also his presidential library. And then you've got the First Lady's National Historic site, which I thought was interesting too. But to have this presidential history, again, I had no idea. I've got a lot to learn.
Yeah,
I think going on the road teaches you that.
And it does. When you go out and travel and go around, you're like, oh my gosh, McKinley, he is a native Ohioan. He called Canton home for much of his adult life. He was a lawyer there. He married his wife there. He ran for president there. And, there's a couple of really kind of fun historical photos. One where he's doing one of his famous front porch speeches, which is where he would do a campaign speech, but he would, instead of going out and about, he would be there at his house, at his front porch, and people would come to him from all over. And there's a picture, of him, out on the front porch, and all you see are these crowds of people who have come to listen to him. But it's interesting how, campaigning has definitely changed. I mean, his way of doing things was definitely unique, but he, it became quite his signature, so to speak.
That's neat. And then so the First Lady's National Historical Site, heard about that during interviews with the National Parks Conservation Association and talking about this site. And to me, it's interesting because a lot of times the First Ladies, you don't hear much about them. In fact, we've had Edie Mayo, on our show years ago. She helped put together the First Ladies exhibit at the Smithsonian Museum. And she was talking about, we needed something for the First Ladies. It's always the presidents and it's the men, but the women, behind every great man, there's a great woman. Just saying. And she was talking about this need. And I think this was one of the first sites, because we talk a lot about it during Women's History Month in March. And this was one of those sites that were one of the first national historic sites dedicated to women, and we don't have that many of them, but this is one of the first and one of the few. And
it is, it is partnership with the whole national park system, but it consists of there's a research center and education area, and where they really focus on making sure they document, from what I understand, all the contributions that the First Ladies have made, because every First Lady has usually seizes upon a cause or some sort of platform in which they pursue and do a lot of work to bring it to light during their time, in the White House. And so, they keep track of all of that. And then the site has the Ida Saxton McKinley House. And Ida Saxton, of course, was McKinley's wife. And, they had a home there. And so, you can go through that. It's kind of a Victorian style house back in the mid 1800s. The furnishings are of the style of that time. The docents are in costume. They'll talk to you a little bit about the house and kind of the history and the whole scene there. So it is a nice. I think it is really nice to focus on, like we said, the First Ladies and what it is that they've done of value while they've been married to the president.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And this is inside a Victorian home that looks beautiful. Again, here we go with the architecture, right?
Yes. And once again, another architectural, hive of all these really cool places, and the styles of architecture, the Beaux Arts, and, the Nouveau, and all the different kinds of Victorian styles. And definitely, if you do take this food tour, it's kind of a nice combination, because you can actually hear from the guide as you walk around. She'll stop at these different places and talk about the buildings and talk about public art. And so, one of their famous ones is the Palace Theater, which I saw from the outside. I think you can go inside, and obviously it is still a working theater with a stage and an orchestra pit and also a silver screen, so to speak. But it goes back, I think the original one goes back, I don't know, back to, I think, the 1920s, a vaudeville kind of movie house.
Wow.
And that was going to be kind of slated for the Wrecking Ball at a certain point in time. And then I think it was the JCs that came in and raised money. And so they reopened it in 1980. And it hosts 300 and some events a year. It has one of the few Killigan pipe organs left in the country, and the only one that actually remains in its original home. And so it's a very cool place. I mean, George Burns was there, Count Basie and his orchestra played. It really was the place at the time.
Wow. And what about the Trumpeters of Justice, these angels? I mean, this is amazing. The Stark County Courthouse is a very cool building, and the Trumpeters of Justice, I think the building goes back to the 1890s, but there's 4 women, and they're, these large copper, I believe, and I think they might be 11 feet tall, but, I think it's commerce, it's justice, it's agriculture, it's industry, and they are beautiful, and they can be seen, from all over. I thought it was remarkably
just a beautiful piece of work. And like I said, you come into town and you can see them, and you're like, what is that? What are those?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and I love that because, to me, there's all of this architecture, the public art, like you talked about, and one of the things that I saw was these murals, and I'm excited to see the Greetings Tour and their mural there. There's a Greetings Tour, and this husband and wife team going across the country and painting these murals. They did one here in Tucson that is incredible, and it's neat because she goes out and takes photographs of the area. And then he's the muralist, and he takes her photos and paints them basically into the interior of the letters. So like that's what you see in Canton or in Tucson. Right. And I was so thrilled to see that. And I've been following them on Instagram ever since they've been here in Tucson. And I'm like, dude, they're cool. And they go everywhere. They were just in Death Valley. They were in Alaska. They're, and then all of a sudden they go quiet and they're like, well, dude, you know what it's like in an RV sometimes? Sometimes things break down. And I'm like, I know. We're going on our Love Your Park tour. I know all about the things that happen on the road. They're the coolest couple with what they're doing. And I didn't know they were in Canton, Ohio. I'm like, oh, now Debbie's there. She's with the mural. I was stoked to see that. That was really cool.
I love being able to walk around a town and seeing murals and public art. It just like we talked about with Cleveland too. It's just I don't know. It just makes for a wonderful experience. And when they come as a surprise and they pop up and you're like, whoa, what's that? And that's cool. And oh, look at that. And there's a music block, and there's a lot of public art, and then there's a lot of there's a lot of football related public art as well. And Canton, its history, it really is the birthplace, of football, of the American Pro Football Association. They renamed it eventually the National Football League, the NFL. But it dates back, I think, to 1920 when it actually formed. And Canton, it's the Football Hall of Fame is located in Canton because, for one reason, because it was founded, the American Professional Football Association was founded there, but also the Canton Bulldogs, they were one of those early day pro football powers. And then also, the great Jim Thorpe, who most people have at least heard of, he was the first big name athlete to play pro football, and he played his first pro football with the Bulldogs, the Canton Bulldogs. So back in 1915. So the citizens of Canton, back in the early 60s, they launched a really well organized, campaign. They were determined to earn the site designation for their city, for Canton. And so the National Football League did award the site for the Hall of Fame to Canton back in 1961, and it opened its doors in 1963.
Wow. And, when you think about the history of football, Theodore Roosevelt stood up for football. He was the one who's like, did they have any exhibits of him? Because it's interesting because he took over from McKinley when, President McKinley was assassinated.
Right.
He was the vice president. And, if you think about both Garfield and McKinley getting assassinated, now that's a whole other history thing I want to get into. I want to go there and just get into that story. And it started making me think about how many presidents have been assassinated in our country. Like, when you think about it, or even through duels and things like that, you start to think like, wow, what happened?
I think it's 4.
But you've got JFK, you've got Lincoln, and then Hamilton. The Hamilton thing, that, what's his name? Not
Aaron.
that was a duel.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting thing.
That's
but
not an assassination.
No, I said a duel.
It's not really an assassination.
And then they were like, dude, we didn't really want to. But when you go into Teddy Roosevelt, he this is how. Okay, I learned all about this on Drunk History. I love Drunk History. It's one of my favorite TV shows ever. So I know that you need to go to the Pro Hall of Fame, Football Hall of Fame to get the true thing. But he really, football at that time, people, when it first started, people weren't quite getting it. And he kind of helped push this to become like a real sport. Did they have anything that you saw on him?
I didn't see anything, but of course, this place is about 118,000 square feet. It's quite large, and there's all different types of exhibits and different focus and emphasis of football, and so there could possibly be something. they do talk about, all the first century, where you can learn the story of the football. You learn about the way the football actually changed in shape and how it became this big worldwide phenomena. And so it's a really interactive museum. And by the way, it is a nationally accredited museum and the first major sports hall of fame to hold this designation. So that in itself says something, that they have accreditation as a museum. And it is remarkably well done. And I think I say in my story, if you're not a fan of the game when you enter it, you're probably going to be one when you leave. And it's just, you get kind of caught up in the excitement, and you go and look at all the bronze busts in the Hall of Fame gallery, and you look at all these bios and photos and videos, and you go to this wonderful show that's this multi-sensory show, The Game for Life, and they've got these holographic figures, of these, coaches and players, and they talk about how football, we've heard about how, just like the game of baseball or game of football, can be used to teach lessons about life, and they focus a lot about commitment and courage, and they focus about perseverance and integrity, and so they really try to emphasize that in terms of what their mission is and their values, which respect and excellence, and really they say it's they look at it as not it's more than a game, and a lot of times the place is billed as one of the most inspiring place on earth, and the Sistine Chapel of football.
And I love that, because you do learn so much from sports. Excellence, you brought that up. I know we're ambassadors of the 8 keys of excellence. The first key of excellence is commitment. Integrity. The fifth one is commitment. And sports and failure leads to success, knowing that you can learn from your mistakes. And football, I think what people love about it is you can see when the underdog winning, and things like that. There's that, and I think that's part of it, where America loves the underdog taking over and going, yeah, watch this,
Absolutely.
And I think we love those stories, and I think that's what's so cool. Even if you don't follow football or you don't understand the different teams, there are so many stories in sports, life lessons from it, and there's just such amazing can do and I will do it stories. Teddy Roosevelt. Okay, I had to go make sure on this. And he was the one who helped football have uniforms, and not just uniforms, but the actual protective gear. That's what he did, because people, when it first happened, when football first came here, or became, a sport, it was more like rugby. Yeah. And I grew up in a rugby culture in South Africa, and it was brutal. And people were appalled what was happening, and even his own son got really, battered up. And he was the one saying, no, we need to have some protective gear. Yeah. And if you think about that now, and how football has changed into the gear, the numbers on your back, the T-shirts and all the merchandise that goes with it, in everything, the colors that you're wearing in your team.
Oh, absolutely.
That's why I think he might be in the uniform department. Did they have that where you talked about the balls changing shape and everything?
They showed the different footballs and how it evolved over the years, and they showed the different uniforms and showed the different equipment and all that kind of stuff. Wow. And there's this wonderful beautiful statue of Jim Thorpe there too, which is and I didn't realize that but a lot of people know he was the first Native American to win gold for the U.S. And he was inducted into the inaugural class. He was enshrined in 1963 into the Hall of Fame. But they took away at one point in time they took away his medals because they found that he'd gotten paid for 2 of his games, and back then they had the amateur rule. But 30 years later, the IOC, reinstated his medals. I think they were for something like maybe the pentathlon, the decathlon, something like that, back in 1912 when he earned them. But I learned things. Some people might have known all this. Football to me, I would be aware of it peripherally. I lived in a house of males. I had sons only, not females. And so in order to find conversation with my sons, I had to learn something about football, and I had to read sports pages and do all that, and in the process, and then go cheer for college teams and all that kind of stuff. So in the process, I learned something about it. But going to the Hall of Fame is tenfold of what I really learned.
Wow, that's amazing. We've done a few interviews with the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, and by the time they finish speaking, you're like, I want to be a sports person. You are like, I want to go. I'm going to be Rocky and run around the block. Because you talk about the inspiration part, you do get into that, and I think it's interesting. It's definitely an American sport, right? And it's just
yes.
this part of American history and culture. I know that you went to the Hall of Fame game and the Concert for Legends. It's played at the Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. So music has always played a part of football when you think about it. The national anthem being sung, there's always the Super Bowl halftime game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So did you get any? Did they have like Super Bowl commercials playing when you went there?
No, but they tell. I mean, you get to know. I believe it was Maroon 5 who played this past enshrinement week for the Concert for Legends. But it's more than just like a day. It's like I think it's a week or 10 days. I don't. It's for the enshrinement week, and it's gone from a day. It's just built up to that, and they get. Thousands of people who come, and the whole thing with the gold jackets when they're enshrined, and I think it's there's I believe there's 48 people that select 18 finalists, and from there they go down, and I think it's no fewer than 4 and no more than 8 are chosen each year. And it's not just players, it's, coaches, it's also executives, from front office or player personnel. And so it's a combination of people who are all involved in the game of football. And so, which I think is great because there are so many other people that are there besides the players that are involved,
Now, the one thing I'm very excited that you wrote about was the National Youth Football and Sports Complex, and this sounds like it's football, soccer, lacrosse, and rugby. Excuse me. And so this is a huge project that is being worked on right now.
Absolutely, and it's the company is Johnson Controls, and they are putting together this big development, and there's these fields that they're already using. They haven't completed all of the fields, but they're already using the fields for youth games. And then they're doing this big campus with, there's going to be a hotel, and there's going to be shops and restaurants, and actually a performance center, and there's going to be some sort of player care center, medical care, and then a whole, kind of amusement park, water park thing. But this is huge, and it's supposed to be finished, or mostly finished, I think, by 2020, which is the centennial of the NFL's founding in the city. And so that is going to be, I think, a huge, major event, and with
big
all
party.
this happening, big party.
Wow, this is so. When you think about Canton, Ohio, is it smaller than Cleveland? I mean, what are we looking at?
Oh, yes, yes.
It felt, because of the photos, and you're writing, it feels very charming and very warm and not so huge city, but something you could just start walking. Like you said, you went on a walking food tour.
Yeah. It's a small city, and the downtown is very, fairly compact, and so you can walk all over downtown, and then go to the Hall of Fame, and then there's, several other, kinds of attractions around Canton as well. But no, the city is, it's not a huge city by all means, and it definitely feels very, just like you said, very kind of warm and welcoming. But there's this real historic edge to it, and you feel that because of the architecture of the buildings, and so that it's kind of a cool vibe to think that a city that is this old, that then also has the Football Hall of Fame here. It's just it's kind of a cool combination of those aspects.
Let's go into the food side, because you went walking around and you said there's food trucks there, there's eateries, cafes, coffee houses. You went to the oldest restaurant, Bender's Tavern.
Yep, and that is that. I think that is back in 1902. I think is when it opened. But yeah, they specialize in turtle soup.
I swear, poor little turtles. Sorry, I can't help
it. And then also.
But I know, but there are
seafood.
Yeah. But the thing to me that you found is Mexican street food, and now you're in Santa Fe. I know you come out here to Tucson, and you Mexican food, and you're thinking about Mexican food in Ohio. How was it? Like, I want to know.
It was great. I mean, this guy who's the owner or the chef there is just, I mean, they had really fabulous. I mean, I think I had the fish tacos because I'm a fish person, and the fish tacos were fabulous. And then they had just these, they had great bowls, and they had wonderful, chips and wonderful accompaniments with those, and just, oh my gosh, it was, I was really impressed. And like I get my fill of very, very good New Mexican food here in Santa Fe, as I know that you get your share in Tucson. And so I'm pretty picky when it comes to things. And I was very impressed with this particular restaurant, which I'll give a shout out to, Street Side. So
right on.
And it's newly opened. It's not even, I don't even think it's a year old. I know it's not a year old.
You went from the oldest to the newest. I like this. And I love it because, hey, listen, our Mexican friends are around the country, and they are some of the best chefs in the world come from Mexico. I'm sorry,
and
this
guy isn't even, he's not even a Mexican native. I mean, and it's just this, he's got a great way of putting in flavors and textures, and it was yummy. And then we went over to George's Lounge, which I think is a 1950s place, but it was a crooner's bar, and Dean Martin actually sang there. And
Nancy,
it is just
Dean
so
Martin.
Cool.
That's the first thing she said of your article. Dean Martin. She's had a crush on Dean Martin since she was a little girl.
Ever. Oh my gosh!
She still does. I mean, it's like, Nancy, if you were to spend happy hour with anyone other than David Attenborough, it would be him.
Dean Martin.
Dean Martin and David Attenborough in the same happy hour.
Right.
Imagine that.
Oh my gosh! She'd be over the moon. Over the moon, Nancy, right?
I know, but hey, I mean, if he was there, like, Nancy needs to go there, because that's going to make her very, very happy, and a happy mother is a happy Tucson, Tucson. I can barely say it.
Hello.
I know. It's like, bleh. But I think that's a good one. Now, you had that's 50s food, but you were talking about, we have the word hipsters everywhere, but this is dipsters.
Yes.
Sauces.
Well, this is, they specialize. I mean, and this is a really beloved locals place, and they have all these, I don't know, is it $5 meatloaf, the kind of day, but they have gourmet burgers, they have these hand cut fries, and they have all these sauces you can dip fries in, and so they're really different types of flavors, like blue ribbon beer cheese, and Ohio maple syrup, and Ben's peanut butter, and then they have these amazing milkshakes that they like, Granny's Dutch apple pie. I had a peach one that was amazing, and also local craft beer, and but it's the ambiance of the place that I think is just so neat, and I that's the kind of place I really enjoy going into, those kinds of places.
And you also had some food from the Orient. You went to Basil Asian Bistro, and the food photos, they look so vibrant and colorful and fresh, and
Yep, they have every type of Asian. It's a meld of different Asian cuisines, whether it's Vietnamese or whether it's Thai or Japanese, Chinese. I mean, it's just really a really cool place, with one of those menus that goes on forever, and you're just like, oh, I cannot make a choice here. And it's a good thing if you're with a group of people, and then you can order a bunch of different things and just kind of share family style, which is the way to go, because there's just too many things you want to try. Instead of just having one meal for yourself, it's like, I want to try this and that.
I know, and there's seafood involved, and Debbie gets happy about that.
Oh, I do. I really do.
What is it? This is interesting, because we were talking about Mexican food up in Ohio, and yet here it is, amazing food, right? And you have traveled to a lot of these Asian countries, and you come back and here it is. You eat in these different restaurants in America, and I mean, that's interesting. When you eat food in this country, because this is it, I'm looking for really good Indian food, and I'm still in search of, I don't know, there's these flavors I have in the back of my mind and in my heart and soul from growing up in different countries with Indian food. And so when you eat food in America, do you look for the flavors that you had in the different countries that you visited?
You know, it's wonderful to try to do that, but I think sometimes it's hard to replicate that. I think sometimes when it's here in the United States, they often do some things to what I call Americanize the flavors, whether it's to make them maybe sweeter or just, I don't know, more maybe accessible or approachable for the mass population. You know, then you come across once in a while, you know, a restaurant that is like, oh my gosh, they really are doing the real thing, you know, and whether it's Thai cuisine or Japanese food or, you know, we've got this wonderful restaurant in Santa Fe. It's called Jumbo's, and it's Afro-Caribbean, and it is good. And it has wonderful flavors that are from, you know, that part of that kind of cuisine and that regions of the world, you know. So, but, you know, every once in a while you come across something and you're like, this is truly authentic. You know, when I was living in Seattle, I would, you know, the first way of seeing whether a Japanese restaurant was really good was, you know, to walk in and see that, okay, the most of the people were dining there were Japanese, you know, and, you know, it's like asking somebody, you know, where can I eat the kind of food that, you know, you are accustomed to eating in your country, you know.
It's interesting because at the same time, I think, you know, I know some Italian restaurants that had to change things up a little bit because Americans didn't quite get Italian cuisine. Some of them, like there's just a difference. They expect pizza to be this way or whatever. And talking to some Lebanese friends and things, and it's interesting to me because you do need to, you know, appease your customers and stay open.
Of course.
And at the same time, the ingredients are never going to be 100% the same as if you were in the other country that you're from, you know. It's never going to be 100%, even if you're importing them. By the time, it's just never 100%, you know.
Freshness.
Right. And so you're going to do something. And then there's like the whole fusion way of cooking. And that's a whole other cool thing is the fusion.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if you're interested, you know, if Asian food is your thing, it's wonderful when there's a meld of those, you know, those flavors and, you know, in the hands of a very skilled and talented chef, you know, who can really bring those flavors to life, you know, it's wonderful and put their own spin on something as well, you know.
Sounds like you had a really good, delicious time, and you got sports in there, you got history in there, you got food, and apparently you got wine, and this winery, winery sounds like it's its own amusement park.
It is. It is a true a destination. It's Gervasi Vineyard, and it's just 10 minutes from downtown Canton, and it's this beautiful estate property that you feel like you're in old world Tuscany, and it, you know, there's a winemaking facility, there's vineyards, there's these beautiful landscapes and a lake, and you know, then there are these you know, wonderful dining facilities, restaurants, the Crush House, where I had lunch, and then there's this bistro, which is more of an upscale restaurant with very authentic Italian dishes, and then the Piazza, which is more casual lakeside type of place. But it's a beautiful place, and you can stay there too. They have these, you know, wonderful, beautiful villas, these luxury suite accommodations. And the thing is they're building more. They're creating a new boutique hotel there, and they're creating another like a distillery, and you know, people have weddings there, and there's this, you know, you can take cooking classes from the chefs there, and you know, the shop and the whole, I mean, it's just, it is one of these places where not only can you spend the whole day there just eating and enjoying wine, but you can spend the night, you know, spend the weekend.
I looked at the photos of it, and I'm looking and going, it almost feels Southwestern in a way, which is going to be more, you know, the Mediterranean style, and, you know, feel, because the rooms, just the roundness there's like almost Adobe-like, doesn't, in a way.
It's it's very Tuscany. It really does have a feel like a very old world kind of Tuscan type of thing. They've done an amazing job with, all the features and the architecture and all, of course, the design touches. And it just, it really was an impressive place. And I've been to a lot of vineyards, but this is truly a destination vineyard, and it has everything there, and the food was excellent. And so I think if you're ever in that Cleveland Canton area, this really is a must if you enjoy wine and good food and an ambiance that takes you back to that old world Tuscany.
And was the wine good? Because we always think about wine. You're going to think about California, Finger Lakes, some in Texas, but Arizona's kicking some wine butt too, and so is New Mexico. I'll be nice to New Mexico. But you don't often hear about Ohio producing wine. And you don't. I know every state does. Thank goodness.
And there are actually, what did they said there was over 250 wineries in Ohio.
Really?
And I do believe that Gervasi, they have won awards. In fact, I saw bottles with awards on them at the various, wine shows that have, and Wine Spectator and things like that. And so, I think they have, they do about a 9,000 case production. And, so they have, a number of different, types of wine, and they even also do actually, I think they also do an ice wine as well, which is
I was going to say, you're up in that area that you could do ice wine.
Yes,
I know Michigan does ice wine.
Yeah,
cool.
So, and Rieslings, and they do a wonderful Toscana, which is like a noble red, and they do a Cab Sauvignon, and so they do. And their distillery is soon going to be, producing vodka and gin and whiskey and brandy and
woohoo! Well, party time. Okay, Canton sounds good because it's also got all the music history too, and I love that you had it's public art. It's like a saxophone just on the street corner. Here it is, this giant saxophone. So there's just so much there. I want to go. I can't wait to get to the Midwest. I had no idea. And so thank you for that, Fire Monkey, going out there and getting good stories and having good times to get the good stories.
Absolutely.
What about lodging wise? What are the kind of, are there bed and breakfast up? Okay, stay at the winery. Okay.
There's, I mean, you've got the Gervasi there, but you've got you've got all different kinds of places. I mean, you've got, kind of small hotels, and you have, there's inns. I'm sure there's probably quite a few other kinds of places, but it's there's plenty of places to stay and be comfortable. And of course, they have to have places to stay just because of the fact that they get all these people coming for the Football Hall of Fame experience. So I think it's definitely and it's also definitely a place that if you wish to come just for the day, if you want to come from Cleveland, you can head over and do the Hall of Fame, and then do, downtown Canton. And so, it's one of those.
You could do it out of Cleveland too. That's good. I bet the Hall of Fame, I mean the Football Hall of Fame, I should say, because that's got to affect the entire area, just like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. I mean, it's like you could just do the Hall of Fame tour and food tours and just be happy. Go to a winery. I mean, this sounds really good to me. I'm going up there. Everyone, again, the website, go to visit Canton.com, and also Pro Football Hall of Fame website is profootballhof.com. And of course, read Debbie's article at blendradioandtv.com. You'll see her expert page there in the expert department, or just type in Canton and you'll get the article. And also you'll be able to see your slideshow and see the photos we were talking about. And you'll see it also in the November to January issue of Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. And don't forget, keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. But before we go, Debbie, we like music, right?
Yes.
And this is the official football song of Big Blend Radio. So we had to play it. We've had many a Super Bowl radio party on Big Blend Radio over the years. And one thing we learned is that when you support any team for any sport, you must eat in your team's name.
Yes.
So, when you're like rooting for the Miami Dolphins, then you need to eat what dolphins eat.
You're right.
So that's what we have learned about football with Big Blend Radio. And then we play music. But everybody, this is Throwdown by Johnny Master and the Mama's Boys out of New Orleans. But this is off of an older album. It's called Take Me to Your Maker. And that's what happens if you don't win. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it's a great album. You can keep up with Johnny Master and the Mama's Boys. Go to johnnymastro.com. But here it is, Throwdown. Thanks so much for joining us, Debbie. Always fun.
Thanks a lot, ladies. Have a good one.
You too.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, da, da.